The throne hall of the Veari Empire was carved from living crystal. Arches of violet glass curved overhead like frozen waves, refracting the light of twin suns into shifting prisms that danced across the polished floor. Columns lined the chamber in symmetrical perfection, each etched with centuries of conquest and diplomacy. At the far end, elevated upon a dais of translucent stone, stood the imperial throne, less a chair than a declaration. Power lived here. It shimmered in the jeweled masks of the nobility. It echoed in the silence between measured words. It lingered in the subtle tilt of a head before one spoke. Princess Lethera sat poised upon the throne, her posture effortless, her violet eyes sharp with disciplined intelligence. She was young by Veari standards, but not untested. Court politics had honed her perception to a razor's edge. She did not miss details, especially not the humans. They stood in deliberate contrast to their surroundings. No jewels, no shimmering robes, only structured uniforms of deep navy and silver insignia. Practical, severe. At their head stood Captain Elias Rowan of Earth. He did not bow excessively, nor did he bristle at the grandeur. He held himself as if he belonged wherever he stood. That, more than anything, intrigued her. The meeting had proceeded with expected formalities, trade routes, mutual defense assurances, tariff revisions along contested corridors. The nobles spoke in polished phrases. The human envoy responded with quiet clarity. Yet Lethera's attention lingered elsewhere. Her scholars had briefed her extensively on humanity. Rapid population growth cycles. Astonishing recovery after wars. Colonies rebuilt within decades. Losses endured without civil collapse. Adaptive. Persistent. Dangerous. She rose without warning. The motion alone silenced the chamber. "Captain Rowan," she said, her voice smooth but carrying effortlessly through the crystalline hall. "There is a matter of biological curiosity I wish clarified." A ripple of unease moved through the masked courtiers. Rowan inclined his head slightly. "Your Highness." Her gaze did not waver. "How often can humans reproduce?" The words struck the air like a blade. A jeweled goblet slipped from someone's hand, shattering against the floor. Several nobles recoiled as if she had uttered obscenity. Murmurs flared, indignant, scandalized, incredulous. "Your Highness," one elder began sharply. She raised a single hand. Silence returned instantly. Rowan's expression did not fracture. If anything, a faint flicker of amusement touched the corner of his mouth. Not mockery, but recognition of tension. "My question is direct," Lethera continued calmly. "My empire's reproductive cycles are narrow, constrained. Your species expands at a rate statistically unsettling. I wish to understand the mechanism." Gasps again. Rowan folded his hands behind his back. "Humans," he said evenly, "are not bound by fixed seasonal cycles. Fertility is not restricted to rare biological windows. Barring health complications, reproduction is biologically possible throughout most of adulthood." The chamber erupted. Impossible. Indecent. Exaggeration. Lethera did not look away from him. "No fixed cycle?" she asked. "No, Your Highness." "And restraint?" "Governed by choice," Rowan replied. "Not by limitation." The nobles fell into heated whispers. To the Veari, whose entire civilization was structured around carefully timed generational continuities, the concept bordered on destabilizing. Limitless potential meant exponential unpredictability. Lethera studied the human carefully. "You speak of capacity," she said softly. "Not obligation." "Correct. And this constancy," she pressed, "has not driven your species to collapse?" Rowan's gaze remained steady. "It has driven us to survive." Silence followed. Not shocked this time. Measured. Calculating. Something fundamental had shifted beneath the gilded certainty of the court. For the first time, the Veari nobles were not examining a minor species. They were reconsidering one. Lethera felt it, the tremor beneath tradition, the hairline crack in assumption. The chamber would never be the same. The silence after Captain Rowan's answer did not last. It fractured. A senior noble stepped forward, silver robes sweeping the crystalline floor, jeweled mask flashing with contained outrage. "Your Highness," he said sharply, "such a biological condition is not strength. It is instability. A species unbound by cycle is a species ruled by impulse." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. "To exist without restraint," another added, "is to exist in chaos." Rowan did not interrupt. He stood as he had before, hands clasped behind his back, posture straight but unthreatening. The picture of composure amid rising indignation. Princess Lethra remained seated, chin slightly tilted in contemplation rather than offense. "Chaos," she repeated thoughtfully. The Veari Empire had been built upon cycles. Reproduction permitted only during designated alignments. Generational quotas carefully regulated. Emotional expression moderated by ritual and law. Discipline was not merely cultural, it was sacred. Their cities grew slowly. Their fleets expanded deliberately. Their population curves rose like controlled arcs. Predictable. Stable. Safe. "Captain Rowan," the silver-robed noble pressed, "if what you claim is true, your species could multiply endlessly. What prevents your worlds from drowning in excess?" "Choice," Rowan replied calmly. The word landed softer than expected. Several nobles scoffed. "Choice is unreliable," one hissed. "Biology is not." Rowan's gaze moved slowly across the court, not defiant, but steady. "On Earth," he said, "we possess instinct, yes. But instinct is not command. We build families when we decide to. We delay when we must. We adapt policy. We endure consequence." He paused slightly. "Our capacity does not compel us. It empowers us." Whispers intensified. "Empowerment without boundary leads to fire," an elder declared. "Fire consumes." Lethra leaned forward at that. "Fire," she said quietly, as though tasting the metaphor. Rowan inclined his head. "Yes, Your Highness." The elder seized upon it. "Precisely. Fire unchecked destroys forests, cities, civilizations." "And fire controlled," Rowan countered gently, "forges steel. Warms homes. Powers engines." The chamber stilled. The metaphor hung between them. Veari culture valued restraint, the slow burn of candlelight. Humanity, by contrast, seemed to embrace flame itself. "Your species glorifies volatility," the noble accused. "Our species survives it," Rowan corrected. A sharper murmur moved through the court now, less outrage, more unease. Princess Lethra observed both sides carefully. "Among my people," she said, her voice smooth but firm, "life unfolds in measured rhythms. We wait for alignment. We prepare for generational continuity. We trust in order." "And that has brought you stability," Rowan acknowledged respectfully. "It has," she agreed. "And yet, you speak of a people who rebuild after catastrophe, who populate new worlds rapidly, who recover from war within decades." She studied him with increasing intensity. "You are not governed by season," she said slowly. "You are governed by will." "Yes." Another noble stepped forward, mask glinting. "Will is fragile, emotion-driven, impulsive." Rowan did not raise his voice. "Will," he said, "is what keeps a species standing when instinct says lie down." Silence fell again, this time heavier. The ideological divide had crystallized. Alien, cycles, discipline, control. Human, will, choice, persistence. To the Veari, control was survival. To humanity, survival was control. Lethra's eyes shone with something dangerously close to fascination. "Perhaps," she said softly, "fire is not the enemy of restraint." The whispers rose once more, sharper, anxious. Tradition was being questioned. And in that questioning, something far more destabilizing than biology was unfolding. Possibility. Night softened the palace. The crystalline brilliance of the throne chamber gave way to silver moonlight filtering through arching glass corridors. Beyond them lay the private gardens of the Veari Empire, a sanctuary of living crystal trees and bioluminescent blossoms that pulsed faintly like distant stars. Princess Lethra walked alone at first. Her attendants had protested. She dismissed them. The court still buzzed with scandal. Whispers of recklessness, of dangerous curiosity, of impropriety. Let them whisper. At the far end of the garden, beneath a canopy of translucent leaves, Captain Elias Rowan stood beside a reflecting pool, its surface mirroring twin moons. He heard her approach but did not turn immediately. "You anticipated I might seek you out," she observed. "I hoped," he replied. There was no arrogance in it, only quiet candor. She stepped beside him, hands clasped loosely behind her back. For a moment they said nothing. The garden hummed softly with nocturnal life. "In my court," she began, "confidence is often a performance." Rowan glanced at her. "And mine. Yours appears unperformed." A faint smile touched his expression. "I'm confident in what I know," he said, "and honest about what I don't." She studied him carefully. "Today you stood before nobles who consider your species volatile, dangerous, undisciplined. Yet you did not bristle." "I've heard worse," he replied lightly. Then, more serious, "Your people built an empire on restraint. It works for you. I respect that. But you would not adopt it," she said. "No." The answer came without hesitation. "Why?" Rowan turned fully toward her now, the moonlight catching in his eyes. "Because humanity doesn't grow well inside cages," he said quietly. "Even comfortable ones." The words settled between them like falling petals. Lethra exhaled slowly. "You speak as though limitation is suffocation." "For us," he said, "it can be." She considered the vastness of her empire, the precise generational planning, the regulated expansion, the careful balance. "We call it stability," she said. "And it is," Rowan agreed. "But stability without growth becomes stagnation." Before she could respond, a voice cut through the night. "Your Highness." An advisor stepped from the shadows, jeweled mask gleaming faintly. His posture was rigid, disapproval thinly veiled. "You should not be alone with an alien envoy," he said pointedly. "Especially one who advocates such incendiary philosophies." Lethra did not turn immediately. "I did not request your counsel," she replied evenly. "It is my duty to protect the traditions of the Empire." "And I am its future," she said softly. The advisor's gaze shifted toward Rowan, sharp and measuring. "These humans unsettle the court," he pressed. "Their capacity alone poses demographic threat. Their ideology poses perspective," Lethra interrupted. "Silence." The advisor hesitated. "With respect, Your Highness." "You may leave," she said, calm but unmistakably firm. A long moment passed. Then he bowed stiffly and withdrew. The garden seemed to breathe again once he was gone. Rowan watched her carefully. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," she said quietly. "I did." She turned back to the reflecting pool. "Your species fascinates me, Captain. Not because of your biology, but because you do not apologize for your nature." Rowan's voice softened. "We've learned not to." Lethra allowed herself the smallest, almost private smile. "Fire," she murmured. "Choice," he corrected gently. She met his gaze beneath the silver moons. And in that quiet exchange, something began, not alliance yet, not trust fully formed, but understanding. A foundation. The fracture did not remain private for long. Within 2 cycles of the garden conversation, the High Council of the Veari Empire convened in emergency session. The crystalline chamber no longer glittered with ceremonial serenity. It felt sharper now. Brittle. Princess Lethra stood before the semicircle of masked nobles rather than above them on her throne, a symbolic gesture meant to invite discourse. It did not soften them. "You have destabilized the court," declared Lord Vaylor, elder of the 4th lineage. His mask was set aside, a rare and deliberate signal of confrontation. His angular features were rigid with contained anger. "I asked a question," Lethra replied evenly. "You elevated a primitive species by entertaining its irregularities." A murmur of approval followed. "They are not primitive," she said. "They are chaotic," Vaylor corrected. "Unbound. Expansionist by nature. Their reproductive capacity alone represents a demographic threat if alliances deepen." "They govern it by choice," she said calmly. A harsh laugh echoed from another noble. Choice is unreliable. Biology is not. Your fascination blinds you. Lethera's gaze sharpened. My fascination, she said quietly, is with resilience. Vaylor stepped forward. Resilience? Or recklessness? You praise fire in a chamber built of crystal. The metaphor again. Fire. The court had seized upon it as accusation. You risk centuries of discipline, Vaylor continued. You question our cycles, our restraint, our very foundation. An heir who undermines tradition invites collapse. A hush fell. The accusation hovered heavy. Are you suggesting, Lethera asked softly, that I am unfit to rule? Vaylor did not retreat. I suggest that curiosity without caution is weakness. The word rippled like a blade drawn from its sheath. Weakness. Lethera felt the weight of it. Not personally, but politically. The court was not merely debating ideology now. It was testing authority. I seek strength, she said. Strength that adapts. Strength that survives beyond ritual. Our strength has preserved us for millennia, Vaylor snapped. And will it preserve us against what comes next? She countered. Silence. No one answered. Because beyond the throne room, beyond controlled cycles and careful generational planning, the galaxy shifted. New powers rose. Old certainties cracked. And humanity was among those rising. The chamber doors opened. Captain Elias Rowan entered at the summons of protocol, human envoy, silent observer. The nobles' masks turned toward him as one. Vaylor gestured sharply. Behold your influence, human. Already she echoes your language. Rowan did not flinch. He inclined his head respectfully to Lethera before speaking. Change breeds fear, he said quietly. The words were not defensive. They were warning. Vaylor's eyes narrowed. Fear protects us. Sometimes, Rowan agreed. Other times it imprisons you. A dangerous thing to say in that chamber. Several nobles bristled openly. Lethera felt the tension cresting toward something more volatile than debate. Tradition versus adaptation. Control versus choice. Fire versus crystal. Enough, she said, her voice cutting cleanly through the rising discord. The chamber stilled. I will not apologize for seeking understanding, she continued. Nor will I silence discourse because it unsettles you. Vaylor's expression hardened. Then understand this, your highness, he said coldly. There are many within this council who will not allow the empire to be reshaped by alien philosophy. It was not a threat. Not overtly. But it was not reassurance either. The session dissolved into fractured murmurs and sharp glances. When the nobles finally withdrew, the crystalline hall felt colder than before. Rowan approached her quietly. This won't stay contained to words, he said. She knew. The tremor she felt beneath tradition was no longer metaphorical. Debate had begun. But debate, she realized, might not be enough. The fracture within the court might have simmered for months. The galaxy did not grant it that luxury. The first report arrived from the outer mining colonies along the Veari frontier. Contact lost. No distress beacon. No survivors confirmed. Within hours, a second report followed, this one incomplete, truncated by weapons fire mid-transmission. Grainy visuals showed jagged silhouettes tearing through orbital platforms, their hulls bristling with asymmetrical weapon arrays. The name whispered through the intelligence channels chilled even the most disciplined among them. The Kraith Ascendancy. An expansionist war faction long thought contained beyond the shattered expanse. Princess Lethera stood at the central tactical dais as holographic projections lit the chamber in cold blue. Outpost Helix, 7 destroyed, an officer reported. Defense fleet overwhelmed in under 6 minutes. Civilian casualties? Unknown. The High Council convened again, but this time outrage was replaced with urgency. Lord Vaylor spoke first. We form defensive lines along the inner corridor. Anchor fleets in rigid formation. Draw them into engagement where our discipline gives us advantage. Murmurs of agreement followed. It was the Veari way. Measured. Predictable. Controlled. Lethera studied the projected trajectories of the advancing Kraith ships. Their vectors were erratic, their formations fluid, fracturing and reforming mid-maneuver. "They do not fight in lines," she observed. "Then they will break upon ours," Vaylor insisted. Another report flared across the display. "Helix 9, gone." The princess felt something tighten in her chest. Centuries of stability. Cycles of discipline. Controlled expansion. The Kraith did not care for cycles. They cared for momentum. That night, beneath the silver glow of the garden moons, Lethra summoned Captain Elias Rowan once more. He arrived without ceremony. "You have seen the reports," she said. "Yes." "The Council insists on traditional engagement." "And you disagree." She did not deny it. "The Kraith move unpredictably," she said. "They fracture our sensor grids. They strike supply lanes before main fleets arrive. Our formations assume compliance with logic." Rowan's expression darkened slightly. "They don't care about your logic." She met his eyes directly. "What would your people do?" The question carried more weight than the one that had shaken the throne room. This was not curiosity. This was survival. Rowan did not answer immediately. He stepped toward the edge of the reflecting pool, considering. "We adapt," he said at last. "How?" "We don't meet chaos with rigidity. We fracture our own formations. Small mobile strike units. Hit their logistics, their fuel, their command nodes. Make them uncertain. That invites disorder within our ranks," she said. "Yes," he agreed. She frowned slightly. "That is not comforting." "It isn't meant to be." He turned to her fully. "You said your empire values restraint, discipline, control. That works against predictable threats. And this is not predictable." "No." The air between them felt heavier. "What you face isn't fire," Rowan continued quietly. "It's wildfire. You don't stand in front of it with a crystal wall. You redirect it. Starve it. Break its rhythm." Her gaze sharpened. "Break expectations." He nodded. "Make them react instead of dictate." Lethra looked up at the stars beyond the glass canopy. For generations, the Veari had believed their cycles were strength. But cycles could be anticipated. Adaptation could not. Beyond the frontier, more outposts went dark. The Kraith advanced. And for the first time, the Veari princess considered fighting not with perfect lines, but with controlled fire. The war chamber of the Veari Empire had never witnessed deviation. For centuries, its holographic projectors displayed elegant, symmetrical formations, fleet lines curved in perfect arcs, defensive grids layered with mathematical precision. Strategy was geometry. Predictable. Controlled. Safe. Princess Lethra stood at the center dais as projections of the advancing Kraith ascendancy pulsed red across the chamber. "They will reach the inner corridor within 3 cycles," an admiral reported. "Traditional defensive lattice is prepared." Traditional. The word felt heavier than before. Lethra lifted her chin. "Cancel lattice formation." The chamber froze. Admiral Sereth stared at her as though she had spoken in an unknown language. "Your Highness." "Disperse the fleets into mobile clusters," she continued evenly. "No fixed lines. No anchor points. Strike wings to operate independently." A wave of stunned silence rippled outward. "That is disorder," Lord Vaylor said sharply. "Our ships are trained for formation discipline." "They will retrain," she replied. "You risk collapse of coordination." "I risk annihilation if we do not adapt." The nobles began speaking over one another, outrage sharpened by fear. "This is human influence. You abandon centuries of proven strategy. You gamble the empire on alien philosophy." Lethra did not raise her voice. "The Kraith do not fight within our expectations. Why should we gift them predictability?" Her gaze swept the chamber. "Captain Rowan will advise on hybrid deployment." The protest that followed was immediate. "A human commanding Veari fleets." "He will advise," she corrected, steel entering her tone. "Our admirals command. But they will learn." Lord Vaylor's mask seemed to glint with cold fury. You fracture tradition. She met his stare unflinchingly. Yes. The order went out. Across orbital docks and command bridges, confusion reigned. Vayari captains trained for synchronized maneuver now received directives encouraging independent initiative. Strike teams were formed, smaller vessels outfitted for rapid insertion and withdrawal. Supply lines restructured to operate in staggered patterns rather than centralized hubs. It was messy. The first engagement proved it. A Kraith assault group pierced the frontier expecting to meet a rigid wall. Instead, they found scattered signatures. False retreats. Flanking strikes emerging from unexpected vectors. Several Vayari units hesitated mid-maneuver, awaiting confirmation that never came. One squadron broke too early and paid dearly. But others adapted. A destroyer captain abandoned formation to ambush a Kraith fuel convoy. A logistics officer rerouted supplies through civilian corridors to evade interception. A frigate squad split deliberately to lure enemy pursuit into an asteroid belt preceded with mines. The strategy was not elegant. It was effective. From the central command bridge, Lethera watched the holographic display shift. Red vectors faltered. Kraith formations, once confident and direct, stuttered, forced into reaction rather than momentum. Captain Rowan stood at her side, silent unless asked. When she did ask, his answers were concise. Push there. Withdraw now. Let them think they've won that sector. Several Vayari officers bristled at his presence. But when a hybrid strike wing crippled a Kraith command cruiser by attacking its communication relays instead of its guns, resistance quieted. The Empire's fleets were no longer glass, beautiful, rigid, fragile under concentrated pressure. They flickered now. Unpredictable. Responsive. Alive. In the war chamber, Lord Vaylor watched the shifting display in strained silence. "This is not our way," he murmured. Lethera did not look away from the battle unfolding. "Then perhaps," she said softly, "our way needed to change." On the tactical map, Vayari ships began to move not as mirrored shards, but as controlled flame. Glass, she realized, reflected light. Fire reshaped the dark. The Kraith ascendancy did not retreat quietly. They adapted as well. Within 6 cycles of initial engagement, their armadas converged upon the inner corridor in overwhelming force, far greater than early projections had suggested. Standard Vayari defensive stations, still anchored in traditional lattice formations along secondary routes, were the first to fall. Rigid lines shattered under concentrated assault. Crystal hulls split. 3 defense platforms were obliterated before emergency withdrawal could be executed. In the war chamber of the Vayari Empire, the tactical display flared red across half the frontier. "They anticipated our hybrid clusters," Admiral Sarath reported grimly. "They've reinforced their flanks and are advancing with supply redundancy." Lord Vaylor's expression hardened. "This is the cost of disorder." Princess Lethera ignored him. "Where are their fuel relays?" she demanded. "Behind their 3rd advance wave. Guarded heavily." "Not heavily enough," she replied. She activated a direct channel. "All mobile strike wings, abandon frontal harassment. New objective, sever logistical spine. Target supply convoys, not warships. Cripple movement." The admirals hesitated only a fraction of a second before relaying the command. Across the stars, Vayari hybrid units pivoted. Instead of colliding headlong with the Kraith's forward assault, they slipped around it, vanishing from direct engagement and reappearing deep within enemy support corridors. Fuel carriers detonated in chain reactions. Communication nodes blinked offline. Kraith capital ships, once surging forward with brutal confidence, began to stutter, pausing mid-advance as resupply faltered. But it was not enough. The primary Kraith dreadnought breached the inner corridor perimeter, its weapons carving through defensive screens with ruthless efficiency. Vayari cruisers fell in succession, hulls rupturing like shattered crystal under sustained bombardment. "Flagship shields at 40%, an officer called out. The chamber dimmed as power rerouted to defensive grids. For a moment, a brief, terrible moment, it seemed the gamble had failed. Lethera stepped forward to the command console. "Open direct line to all remaining units," she ordered. Static crackled. "This is your princess," she said, voice steady despite the tremor beneath the deck. We do not retreat into formation. We do not wait to be struck. Move. Adapt. Strike where they are weakest, not where they are loudest. A pulse of acknowledgement icons blinked across the display. Then something unexpected appeared. A cluster of human vessels, sleek and angular, dropping from hyperspace along the Kraith's outer vector. Captain Rowan's voice cut cleanly across the comms. Thought you might need a distraction. The human fleet did not target the dreadnought. They targeted its escorts, fuel tenders, and sensor frigates. Within minutes, the Kraith command ship found itself blind in sectors and starving for coordinated response. Ve'ari strike wings seized the opening. They did not form lines. They converged from every direction, controlled flame instead of mirrored glass. The dreadnought's engines flared once, then sputtered as its support matrix collapsed. A final concentrated volley from combined Ve'ari and human units split its forward armor. The massive vessel broke apart in silence, debris scattering across the void. Across the battlefield, Kraith ships disengaged, fracturing, retreating, their momentum finally broken. The war chamber fell quiet. Red indicators faded. Admiral Sereth exhaled slowly. Lord Vaylor said nothing. Lethra watched the stars steady once more. They had not won through discipline alone, nor through fire alone. They had survived because they changed. The war did not end in triumph. It ended in silence. Across the frontier of the Ve'ari Empire, debris fields glimmered where fleets had burned. Orbital platforms drifted in fractured segments. Entire colonies bore the scars of near evacuation, lights dimmed, infrastructure damaged, families displaced. But they stood. The Kraith ascendancy had withdrawn beyond the shattered expanse, their advance broken, their momentum fractured. The Empire was wounded. It was not shattered. Princess Lethra stood once more within the great crystalline throne hall, though the light filtering through the arches now reflected hairline cracks along several upper columns, structural damage from the tremors of distant bombardments. The symbolism was not lost on anyone. Glass could crack. It could also endure. The High Council gathered before her, masks polished but postures subdued. Lord Vaylor stepped forward first, slower than before. The Kraith threat has receded, he acknowledged. Hybrid deployment proved effective. The pause before the final word did not go unnoticed. Lethra inclined her head slightly. Effectiveness preserved us. A murmur of reluctant agreement followed. She rose from the throne and descended the dais, not above them, but among them. Let it be recorded, she said clearly, her voice carrying through the chamber, that without human advisory and fleet intervention, the inner corridor would have fallen. The words struck harder than any battle report. Some nobles stiffened. Others looked away. Captain Elias Rowan stood at the chamber's edge, expression unreadable. We owe survival not only to our discipline, Lethra continued, but to adaptation. To partnership. Lord Vaylor's jaw tightened. You would formalize this alliance? Yes. The word was not hesitant. A ripple passed through the court. Humanity's nature unsettles us, another elder said carefully. Their capacity. Their unpredictability. And yet, Lethra replied softly, it was their unpredictability that shattered our enemy's rhythm. Silence answered her. Rowan stepped forward when beckoned. If our presence endangers your internal stability, he said evenly, we can withdraw. Humanity does not require gratitude. The offer was sincere. It unsettled the chamber more than arrogance would have. Lethra turned toward him fully. You would leave. If it preserves your empire. For a moment, something unspoken hung between them. Then she faced the council. I do not seek preservation of tradition at the cost of survival, she declared. I seek strength. She extended her hand, not ceremonially, but openly. To humanity, I offer formal alliance. Shared intelligence. Shared defense. Shared growth. A breathless pause. One by one, council members inclined their heads. Reluctant, but accepting. Vaylor was last. His bow was shallow, but it was given. Later, beneath the silver moons of the palace gardens, Lethra stood beside Rowan once more. The Kraith will regroup, she said quietly. Yes. They will return. They always do. She studied the stars, feeling the vastness beyond their fragile victories. "Then we prepare," she said. "Together?" he asked. She met his gaze. "Together." Beyond the borders of known space, distant signals flickered, movements unseen, powers awakening to the shift in balance. Empires had risen and fallen before. But something different had begun here. Not conquest. Not domination. Alliance. And in a galaxy built on rigid lines and careful cycles, the simple act of standing together changed everything.